Okay, everybody, welcome to Lunch and Learn. This is a job seekers group, and we're here to provide support and resources and a little bit of networking along the way. I'm Linda Brubaker, and I am a job search coach, and I've been a job search coach for the last 7 years. In a previous life, I was an HR business partner, a hiring manager, a recruiter, a headhunter. I've seen the recruiting side, the job search side from all sides of the desk. And that's what my sweet spot is being able to help you navigate these waters, and they're tough and changing all the time. And I'm here to support you in any way that we can. So I want to start by doing a quick, anybody have a quick win that they want to be able to share? Something that happened in the last week or so that you want to talk about? Please raise your digital hand if that's you. Okay, Susan, I was hoping you would. Susan, you have to unmute, Susan. There you go.
Yep, I was figuring that out. Hi, everybody. I have a job. So I'm wondering why I'm in the car. I had something already planned, and work was, when you get a new job, if you already have things planned, they still let you do it. So the amazing thing about this for me is that they reached out to me. It was someone that I used to work for, or with, rather. He was a partner, a subcontractor to us. And he was scrolling, he had a need, and he was scrolling through LinkedIn. He saw my open to work banner, contacted me, said, I might have an opportunity. Are you interested? And I talked to him and went into his office and chatted with the rest of the team, pulling over right now. And they called me 2 days later, offered me a job, and I said, put it in writing. And then over the weekend, asked for a little bit more money, and I was direct about the title that I wanted, and they said, we accept, your request, and here's your letter, and away I go. So did I see that the subject of today's meeting is about change and dealing with change?
It is.
So can I just tell you, the first day I was at home and I did like 3 hours onboarding. The next day I went into the office in Maryland. It's about 2 hours from my house, and I'll be there a couple times in the beginning. By the end of my first day in the office, I went back to my hotel room and I was in tears. What have I done? What am I doing? This is a job. I'm going to get through this. They always say it's easier to find a job when you have a job. But then by the next day, I felt so much better because I had a project. And I think for me, I always want to be doing something. And that first day at a new job is about meeting some people, getting the lay of the land, understanding what they do, but you're not necessarily actually doing something. So the next day, an opportunity came up, and I said, I want to do that. They're like, okay, that's a great start for you. And so now I'm just a little over a week into it, and it's going much better. So I just wanted to share that change thing, being unemployed for 14 months from a corporate position, going back into it. There's change there as well. And I just have to take it slow and be happy for the opportunity to be there. So
Absolutely.
just wanted to share that.
Oh, thank you so much, Susan. That was wonderful. And congratulations on this job. And I want you all to remember that what she said was they reached out to her because she had that green banner on. That you're going to see a lot of conflicting information about that. I will tell you that it really, truly works. It will not work against you. Let me say that again. The green banner doesn't work against you. Okay. In fact, I have a post scheduled going up later in the week that talks about that. It's really important to let people know that you're doing it. It's one of the reasons we do this kind of networking. The green banner is really networking. It's sharing who you are, what you do, and telling people that you're open to new opportunities. So it's a great thing. Susan also mentioned one other thing that I wanted to talk about very briefly. And I know I said we were going to do quick wins. I'm going to contradict that because it's important to recognize that when you start a new job, one of the things that we do is subconsciously we start comparing it to what we've been doing before. And we may feel like we're overwhelmed or this isn't exactly the same. It's part of that dealing with change, giving ourselves permission to start slowly to recognize that this is a new situation and that things may be different and that you have to go with the flow and you're going to grow and learn and start enjoying that as well. So congratulations, Susan. Thank you so much for not only sharing it, but for talking about your journey and sharing all of the rest of that with us. Congratulations.
Of course. Thanks, everyone.
Stop in anytime. Okay, John. Unmute, John.
Yep. Okay. So mine is probably a little bit more to with change, but a little bit of a, I guess, a small win or small wins. So last week I was laid off. I kind of saw it coming, so it wasn't too much of a surprise. Um, but you know, luckily I had started my job search and had some, job prospects and interviews set up. So I have been getting, I turned on the open to work banner on. I've been getting more recruiters reaching out to me about some phone screens and some interviews. So that's good. And then ironically, the company that I had a final round interview with 2 weeks ago and didn't get the job. A recruiter reached out to me about a contract position at the same company. And I talked to him today. So he's going to submit my resume. And I already talked with the hiring manager in my final round interview. So hopefully it's a contract position, but I've heard from some of the people that worked there when I interviewed, they started out as a contractor and then became full-time, after a certain period of time. So I'm hopeful if that's a possibility, but then I also have some other possibilities for other contract jobs and other full-time jobs. So I'm just kind of, relieved, kind of, even though I did get laid off, but I was in a kind of a toxic environment, so it feels much better to be out of that environment.
Well, congratulations. It sounds like you got some good stuff going. And by the way, contract positions are great ways of getting your foot in the door. Lots of companies use them as that testing period, if you will, to get those people on board to understand what they do, how they work, for you to learn more about them. So it's a win-win in some cases, unless you absolutely need benefits, in which case that doesn't happen. But contract roles really do work. And my cracked crystal ball says not only that contract roles are not going away, that they're going to start increasing again. Okay, so companies are going to be using them more. Don't dismiss them out of hand. So congratulations, John. Keep us posted.
Okay, thanks. I will.
Sherry.
Yes. Did Susan say her job title and what company she's with?
No, she didn't share that.
I can tell you though, it's director of, so they were hiring a proposals manager. And I said, I can't go back to being a manager because I've been a director, I've been an AVP. So I need a director's title. So they told me director of proposals. So when the offer came in, it was director of proposals and growth. So that's the title. And I haven't put it on Facebook yet because or on LinkedIn because I'm trying to coordinate with them to make that announcement.
Perfect. So congratulations, that's a great title. Okay. Now, by the way, one more piece. It's not important or not necessary for you to change your title on LinkedIn or to add the fact that you've taken that new job on LinkedIn right away. Some people will wait a little while till they feel really comfortable or feel that this is the right move. You can wait as long as a month or two before you add it. I might take the green open to work banner down, but you don't have to add that new job title yet until you're ready to do so. If you decide to wait, private message me and I will show you how you can still make the announcement on LinkedIn and change the date, even though LinkedIn doesn't really allow you to backdate for that announcement, but you make the the post as if you just started today. And then after a day or two, you go back and you re-edit your experience listing to change it to the proper date so that it's in line. Okay, but let me know if you're in that situation. Hope one of you gets into that situation quickly. Okay, thank you. Willa.
Really quick question. What are your thoughts on toggling that open to work banner, right? Like, let's say the open to work banner is on, shutting it off for a week and then putting it back on. Do you think that makes a difference?
Makes a difference in terms of what?
Visibility. I don't know. I've been hearing a lot of things on LinkedIn about how that might, I mean, in addition to keeping your LinkedIn up to date, you know, every so often adjusting your About Me section, it's just another thing to take into consideration. So I was just curious on your thoughts.
So you can, if you want to, toggle it on and off. It's strictly up to you. My feeling is that having that banner on will help you. If you want to take it off for a little while and then put it back on again, you can absolutely do that. Will LinkedIn then reassess? Okay. Every time you make any kind of a change on your profile, LinkedIn reassesses it and it brings it back up to the top again. So that's not a bad thing. My recommendation is always make some sort of a change on your profile. In fact, this is Linda telling Linda too, that Linda, you have to make a change on your profile at least every 2 weeks. It doesn't have to be much. You can change a single word. Okay, save it and then redo it. So if you want to change it, you don't like it, change it back. It will still count as a new change in LinkedIn, even if you're just putting it back in again. And that will, again, increase that visibility in terms of LinkedIn's algorithms. So a change isn't going to hurt you. If you want to toggle your on and off for the looking for the new job, that banner, you can do that as well. But the one thing that I would caution is that every time you put on that open to work banner, it's going to automatically generate that I'm looking for work. If you're going to continue to do that, you can either suppress that message, say you don't want it there, or make sure that the message that you're putting out is one that you are tailoring yourself. You can add to that message that's out there. It doesn't have to be just the standard. Okay. Thanks for the great question. Okay, Al.
Just I have a call this week, a follow-up call to, I think I mentioned this a while back, that they were creating a position for me.
Yes.
My alma mater. Well, it's been dragging on, they've gone back and forth to change what the job is going to be. So I have another follow-up call this week and hopefully something happens. It's been going on for a few months. So I'm trying to control my, I'm trying to not push them along to say, okay, what's the deal? When are we going to get this done? So anyway, that's happening this week.
Well, I'm glad that it's still in the works. That's a good thing. Okay, so I noticed a question in the chat about you shutting the notification off in terms of the updates for your network, Willa. Is that what you meant?
I just mean every single change that I do to my LinkedIn, I don't need, you know, if I added a class to my recent graduate degree, I don't need every single notification or adjustment that I make on my account being sent out to my whole network.
And I agree. And I think that that's an important thing for everybody. I'd like you all to turn that off. Okay, because otherwise, every time you make a change, it's going to go out to everyone. You can choose if you want to put it on because there's something significant. What you want to have out there to your network and to everyone is when you have that new job change. That's important. The idea of shutting off the notification about open to work for your network, I'm not sure that that's a good thing to do. Now, if you're toggling it on and off, it might be. But one of the reasons for putting on the banner is to let people know that you're looking. So that's an important thing. Okay. Michelle, you asked, what's the point? Oh, of turning off the notification. Did I just answer that?
Yes, you did.
Okay. So yeah, the reason for putting it on is to make sure that people know what's going on. And I know that this is not the topic for the day. But if you are putting on that green banner, my recommendation is that unless you have a current job, you make it open to everyone, not just to recruiters. When you make it open only to recruiters, the green banner doesn't show up. So a lot of people feel, or some people feel more comfortable with that. But when you do that, it's only open to the recruiters who are actually paying for something called LinkedIn Recruiter. And latest research says that that is fewer than 1/3 of the recruiters who are actually using LinkedIn. So you are limiting your ability to reach out to people, or for people to reach out to you. You find the open to work when you are editing your profile. It's up at the very top in that section where your picture is. There'll be 2 pencils in that area, but there's also one that says enable open to work. Okay. All right. Any other wins? Then let's start talking about change. Susan started the conversation by saying it's different, right? That she's noticed the difference when she moves into the office or out of the office from that time being away. What kinds of changes are you all dealing with? Okay. While I'm waiting for you all to answer, Michelle, it doesn't make any difference what time of day it's best to post the open to work. There's been a lot of conflict about best times to post. I would say post it probably, again, I'm telling Linda this as well, that you probably want to post it maybe before lunch, only so that you post it at a time when, if people are reaching out to you immediately after seeing something, you can respond within the first hour or two. And that's true of any post. You want to be able to get back to the at least 1 or 2 people right away. Okay. So change is happening all around us. And we know that whether it's you're changing fields, you're changing jobs, you've been working and now you're not, or you're going back to work after having not been working for a while, it's hard to deal with sometimes, okay? We also know that change is one of those questions that gets asked a lot in interviews. So if you think about it, what kinds, for those of you who've been on interviews recently, or you've been doing the research on interview questions, what kinds of interview questions have you been seeing with that whole idea of change, something related to change?
Hi, Linda, it's Gwen. So I work both sides of my desk, and what I would say about change, when I say both sides, I'm actively looking for a position and I'm actually also working on some retained searches. So one of the questions I ask a lot of candidates is, how are they staying up to date in their current role? So that's important, because obviously nothing stays the same. The only constant is change.
Absolutely. And that's a great question too. So, and that's a good point for all of us, is that we need to make sure that we are continually doing some sort of learning or growth, even if it's just reading a newsletter. There's something that you can be doing to keep yourself up to date, and that's an important aspect. So let's turn that around a little bit. What are you doing to keep yourself up to date is one way of viewing it, but if you're asked the question, how do you deal with change? It's a broad open question, but it gives you actually an opportunity to help direct the conversation. So I don't know about some of you, but I know that I am on the other side of 50. Not going to tell you how far, but I'm on the other side of 50. And one of the things that we face sometimes as a person who's been around for a while is that whole idea of being resistant to change. So you can use a question about dealing with change, implementing change, as a way of helping you to counter that. So we know that, for example, when you're talking about how do you deal with change, often what we'll do is we will talk about I'm extremely adaptable. I'm always learning. I'm doing a variety of different things. But what if you were to use that question as a way of demonstrating rather than just saying it? We all know that stories are really important as part of the interview process. Stories are really important as part of your cover letter, as part of your resume, okay, a piece of the story. They're important as part of your LinkedIn posts and your comments. So use a story to help highlight what it is you want to showcase while you're still answering the question. When you're answering the question about dealing with change, people want to hear an actual example. On the other side of the desk, it's not enough to say that I'm adaptable and I deal with change well. It's important to demonstrate a situation as close as possible to one that might be appropriate in their situation in the new job, but to demonstrate a situation in which you actually dealt with change. And because it's such a broad open question normally, you get to focus how you're going to actually be talking about that story. So if you are, as I am, an experienced individual, one of the questions in somebody's mind might be, you're resistant to change. So how do you deal with change? Talk about a situation in which you actually helped to initiate the change, or that you actually helped to implement a new change. You can even talk about what you learned, taking the initiative to learn something new to help make that change happen and for you to be able to adapt and implement that change. As part of dealing with that idea of change, let's say that you want to be looking at it from a standpoint of demonstrating your leadership capabilities, because you can do that even if you don't have that management or leader title. So when you're talking about dealing with change, or that open-ended question about dealing with change, focus in on the role that you played in that leadership aspect, whether it's working on a specific aspect of the project, whether you were mentoring someone else, whether you were helping to facilitate the conversations. How did you help to lead that change and that change process, or that organization? So what I'd like to do is, as we're starting to talk about all of this, if somebody has specific questions about it, that's great. If somebody wants to volunteer to actually answer an interview question about change, and then let us give you some feedback and help you redirect it perhaps, that would be a good thing too. Anybody willing to do that? I know I'm putting you on the spot. Okay, Michelle. Thank you. Oops. Hello. You have to unmute.
Sorry, I thought I had unmuted.
That's okay.
All right, go.
All right. So before we do, tell me a little bit about a hypothetical organization that you'd like to be working for and what the job might be.
I'm targeting large organizations that run both Salesforce and SAP because I'm interested in the intersection of the two, the mapping of data between the two, the decisions that go into deciding where functionality belongs, whether it belongs on one side or the other, or maybe both.
Okay. So what would a target job title be?
At the moment, business analyst, lead business analyst, senior business analyst, project manager.
Okay. So for this situation right now, Michelle is interviewing for a position as a project manager. Okay.
All right.
And Michelle, can you give us an example of how you might deal with change?
Okay. Let me just preface that I always am dealing with change. That is my profession. I am a proponent of change. I'm the one who manages change and the one who implements the changes, the one who finds out why changes need to be made and what changes need to be made. That's part of business analysis. In addition to that, I am studying Lean Six Sigma, the green belt stuff, the free stuff online. I have a Salesforce class that is my class, that is my group of people. We study together. It's a study group every Wednesday night. And Saturday mornings, I attend Salesforce Saturdays. So I'm trying to keep up with Salesforce. I'm also keeping up with Teams and Microsoft stuff because I'm an admin for my alumni club's domain and their Teams domain and the entire domain, the admin for the whole Microsoft 365 package, which I got for them for free as a donation by applying to Microsoft. So I'm into this stuff. I taught at Office Technology for 6 years.
Okay, so great background. Can we get some feedback from Michelle on that answer as an answer to the question, how do you deal with change? Because Michelle gave us a lot of good information. Yes, John.
So yeah, I think it was a lot of good information, especially the information that you talked about that you were working with Salesforce, attending Salesforce Saturdays and the Wednesday meetings. That shows a lot of like commitment to want to learn, especially outside of normal Monday through Friday hours. So I think that was great.
Thank you. Okay, and
What could I have done better?
so from John's perspective or from mine?
Anybody?
Okay, let's get Willa in there or Michelle in there first and give her feedback, and then I'm going to give you some as well. So Michelle.
Hi, everyone. I'm driving, so I'm not going to look directly at the camera. I liked how she leveraged her transferable skills in every area of how she was answering the question, because she took what she does for a living as a business analyst to contribute change as part of the response. You know, it's great when you leverage transferable skills because it showcases that you've done it. And that role naturally doesn't. I think what maybe I would have added to it was an example.
Exactly. And that would be my feedback as well, is that your example, your story was very broad-based. It was more on learning new things rather than demonstrating how you were able to use some of that in actually implementing or managing change.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I felt time constrained for that, but I can give an example if you would like.
Okay, so thank you. And we'll let you do that again in a minute. All right. Thanks, Michelle. And by the way, be careful driving. That always bothers me when people are doing this while they drive. Okay. James, it looks like you've got. Oh, sorry. And then I apologize, Willa. I saw your hand was up, and we'll get you in a moment. I apologize.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out it's good to see that Michelle has a schedule.
Mhm.
You know, she's got a to-do list. Just the way she was describing. Just points out that she has things to do and that she's motivated or self-motivated, and that she's moving forward. That's all.
I agree. Thank you.
Yeah.
Willa, I've lost you on the screen. Can you put your digital hand back up again?
I can also just respond.
Perfect.
But I can put it up too. I thought it was a really great answer. And I agree with the example. And then I was thinking, when you said change, to me, shifting priorities and pressure came to mind. But I also think it's an art, right? To answer a question and give a specific answer to what's being asked and not necessarily add additional things that aren't being asked of you. But those are the two things that came to mind when I heard dealing with change. I was it also depends on the person who's asking those questions and where the conversation is going. But to me, those are two things that I probably would have brought up in my answer. But then again, it depends on the person.
I think that's great feedback from all of you. Okay, so let me now add mine as well. When somebody on this side of the desk, so this side of the screen, is asking that question about dealing with change. I know one of the things that you were trying to do, Michelle, was talk about how you're continually growing and learning and bringing it all together. But as a business analyst, one of the things that I missed in that answer was how you help other people deal with change. You're the go-between, okay? The translator, if you will, in many cases, between two different groups, two different ideas. And that idea of being able to listen, to explore, to ask the right questions, and then to bring those ideas together to help other people deal with change, that's what the role of a business analyst is. And I missed that in the answer. I heard a lot about self-growth and what you're doing to maintain that knowledge, keep yourself up to date. So if you wanted to use that as a way of focusing in on making sure that you are always aware of what's new in the market so that you can help adapt to that kind of change, you're always learning that way, okay? So that you can start bringing in and implementing these new technological changes. You could have done that. But what I heard, I didn't think that answer went quite far enough in that, why are you doing the training? That makes any sense. Okay.
That's fair.
Okay. So this is all as a way of trying to make sure that we're providing additional resources for you and for all of us. So the idea of the dealing with change is, and one of the things that Will said was, you have to really listen to the question and put it in the context of what the rest of the conversation was. And I know we were putting you on the spot here. So thank you very much for being the guinea pig and being willing
No problem. No, it was very valuable. Thank you. Well, I did try to explain that what business analysis is. I didn't go into it in depth, and I didn't give an example, which is absolutely correct.
Okay, so in the context of an interview, you might not have to explain what business analysis is going into it fully, because you're interviewing for somebody who already knows what that role is. But if you talk about how you view businesses, okay, as being that translator, whatever it is you want to call it, and then how you implement it and how you use that in that fashion, that might be a good way of doing it. Okay.
Makes sense.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Example, I
Thanks
appreciate
everybody for all your comments. I appreciate it. It's
and
helpful.
I'm glad. So we'll do this some more. One of the things that we want to do is make sure when those of you who are willing to do this as a guinea pig, is that we are giving positive feedback as well as the ideas that things go forward. We know we're putting you on the spot, and I thank you so much for being willing to do that. Sherry.
Yeah, okay, so can you hear me?
Again.
Okay, so maybe I think I kind of understand where you're going through with this, as far as like, you know, interviews when they're talking about change, because, all right, so just to kind of give everybody else a synopsis, I was an executive assistant for 6-7 years, actually, yeah, from, you know, close to 20 years ago. I've been in marketing since that time. I am looking to get back into being an executive assistant instead of marketing. But is that why people are asking? Is they think that I don't have what it takes to do that? Then, okay.
Well, if they're asking as part of a change question, Sherry, I'm not sure what you're asking.
Oh, because, okay, so a couple of third-party recruiters that I emailed, they said that, you know, they want someone with more recent experience. Is that what it's about with this whole change thing? You know, I mean, why they're not, you know, accepting me to move on with the interviews? They think I can't be adaptable?
No, I think it's really more a question, Sherry, and we can talk about this offline if you like, but it's really more a question when we're trying to do those kinds of career changes, that you're not making it clear what you can do for them. And that you're not, what we need to do is when we're making those career shifts, even if it's a shift back to something that we've done before, or taking that shift to the side, it's important to be able to help them focus in on how what you've done matches what they need.
Okay.
Okay, it's not enough to say, I can do it. You have to be able to put together stories in a way that they understand it.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you for that.
absolutely. Anyone else willing to be our guinea pig for the day and talk about a little bit of change? Because I've got another change question. John. Oh, let's see, Sherry, your hand is still up. I'm going to put it back down. Okay. John, okay. I lost you.
Sure, I'll be I'll be I'm volunteering.
All right. I lost you on screen, so trying to bring you up so that we could see you. Can you put
Oh,
your digital hand back up again? I lost you.
sure. Let me, there we go. Yeah, the video is showing for me.
There we go. Okay. So John, tell us a little bit about the kind of industry you're looking at, the kind of role you're looking at.
So the industry is not as important to me as finding the right company culture fit.
So tell us the company that you're talking to right now, for example.
Sure. The company I'm talking to right now is in the automobile industry, and they are a large, worldwide company. So I think it'd be great to be there to work with them because there's lots of growing opportunities. And that's one of my reasons for looking for a new job is
Okay.
career growth.
So tell me a little bit about, or tell us a little bit about what this, say the contract role or what the position was that you were applying for.
So it is a senior manual QA
Thanks.
tester.
Can you explain to people what that might mean?
Oh, sure. So that's working with business analysts to make sure that the requirements have enough details for the developers and also the QA team to test against the requirements. And then sometimes it's working with the developers on helping them to understand how to code for the requirements.
Okay. So have you been asked some of those change questions, John?
So yes, I have been asked some of the change questions because I'm also trying to transition from QA to business analysis. And I think that might be part of my challenge of finding a job because I'm trying to transition. Because people see I have a lot of QA experience and I do have some BA experience, but I have more QA experience.
Okay. So now, since we've had two questions about that, now I'm going to go to my trusty pad and paper today and remind myself that we probably want to have a session on career transition, transitioning fields or transitioning roles. Okay. So the change questions that you've had, John, have been about why you want to change field, not about how you deal with change. Is that correct?
They have, yeah, they've been more about why I want to go into business analysis.
Okay. So we're going to save that question for another time. But what I want to do then instead, since you volunteered to be our guinea pig, and I do appreciate that. So John, you've had to deal with a number of situations in which things didn't work out the way that you'd hoped, and the team had to make a shift. Can you tell me about what your role was in that change process when you were trying to get people to come around to your side of thinking?
Sure. So I explained to everyone on the team how the changes affects us, and to not let that change like stress people out because sometimes people get stressed when things are changed or when there's changes. And in both QA and also the BA field, there's always changes. For example, there's always changes in requirements, sometimes that are found during testing, which requires the developers to recode, and then testers have to retest. So it's a little frustrating, but I try to remain calm and not get stressed about that. And then I try to, if other people on the team are stressed, I try to portray that it's, it's just part of the world we live in and not to get stressed about it.
Okay. So my first suggestion is that you get a little more specific rather than generic. Anytime you're trying to give a story, guys, what I'm looking for is not so much that there's a right or wrong answer for most of these things. I'm looking for your process. I'm looking for your thought process. I'm looking the way it worked and what you actually did. And when you're very generic, here's what I try to do, as opposed to here's an example of what I did. The examples demonstrate a whole lot more than the generic. If you go back to the, any of you have little kids, the whole idea of kindergarten show and tell, okay? You can, in that case, if you're showing something, it becomes so much more vivid than just talking about it. And in this case, you are showing us by the stories that you're telling. So when you're asked about change, always try and have some sort of an example of a situation you were actually in. What you did, what worked, what didn't, what your specific role was. And that really helps to clarify it. The other quick piece of feedback is, depending upon who you're talking with, using the acronyms like BA and QA might work. But for this audience, my guess is that some people didn't know what you were talking about. Acronyms are things that you should be aware of in your job search, in every part of it, from the resume to the cover letter, to the posts that you make on LinkedIn, to your LinkedIn profile, and to your interview stories. Make sure that if you are using an acronym, it is one actually used specifically in that industry that everyone would understand, that it is one used not just in the company that you came from, and that the people you are sitting with understand what you mean, or you're going to get that blank stare and you're going to lose them. Okay. Michelle.
Just tying to what you were saying, I completely agree. It needed to be specific with an example, but had it led with the opportunity statement or the problem statement, I think that's where you could have led to be specific, because you went in right to your process at a very high level. So that was, my immediate reaction.
Great observation. Okay, so if you were to re-answer it a little bit, what kinds of things might you say? Or does anybody else have any feedback before we continue? So if you were to redo it, John, and provide an additional piece of information about the specific example, you want to try it again?
Oh, sure. So when we had a project that had changes in the requirements, I helped a coworker overcome their anxiety with the changes in the requirements and help them to help them to ease their anxiety and realize that it's just part of the job and not let it get to them.
Okay, so in that case, it's a good start. So you might talk about using that as an example of how you were able to mentor other people, how you were able to provide that kind of additional resources. So how did you help them to understand that it was part of the job, and not to stress about it? Give them this, here's some of the tools that I gave them to use. We talked about this, okay? You can, BA and QA are all about change.
Yeah.
Okay, it's constant. Okay, So dealing with change is an everyday part of the process. And I would probably say that, recognize that as part of the answer, because that clarity says that you recognize that this is not a one-off. It happens all the time. And so you've developed all of these tools, these strengths, and I'm going to share one of them now with you. Okay, you don't have to say that last piece, but that's the impression that I want you to leave with somebody as you're doing this. Okay. But the idea of being able to provide that kind of an answer, that situation really helps. I saw somebody else's hand up a minute ago, and I'm sorry I lost it.
Excuse me, that was me. I'm another John, so it's kind of confusing.
It's okay. Can you put your
but,
digital hand back up, John?
Pardon me?
Put your digital hand back up so I can find you.
Um,
Or if your camera's off, I'm not going to find you anyway.
my camera's on. My name is John Ray.
Okay,
It's
I'll,
right in the front there, but where's the hand? Oh, there it is. You got me?
I will in just a second. So go ahead, ask your question while I'm finding you.
I I wasn't actually gonna ask a question. It was an observation because I've been through, interviews with a company called Amazon Web Services. And it's all about, tell me about a time. Like, it's not, they don't, they don't ask me if I went to President's Club or how much I sold or anything else. Tell me about a time when there was a situation and how you dealt with it. My thought, John, was your example was you were helping somebody else. That they don't care about that other person. I would suggest to frame a answer that might say, here's what was going wrong, here's what I did, and here's what the outcome was. 5 minutes, 3 minutes, and then they're gonna keep asking you more. But I find myself elaborating too much, and my job search coach is like, John, just shut up. Just here's what happened, and here's what I did. Not what my team did, not what the other world did. Here's what I did. And then they'll ask you another one. It's gonna keep going. But Amazon is famous for their, excuse me, interview strategy. And 5 interviews in one day. And and then you're done.
Which is nice.
It was nice, and they were honest, and they followed through. And they said, we will let you know within 48 hours. And what I learned afterwards, because I became part of that process, is we all get together after the interview and say, what did you think about John's ability to be compassionate or to be, meet the Amazon rules of code. And it was hardening because I'm like, this doesn't make sense. But clearly Amazon has figured something out. And so if you ever want to Google that, there's books and stuff like that. But I would suggest a story that focused on what you did only, because you only have a few minutes, and then they'll extract more if they want.
Right.
And I'm sorry that I'm breaking up a little bit here, but
You're doing fine. Great feedback. Thank you.
okay.
Yeah, that's very true, because one of my when I've had some interviews, that's exactly what happened. Is like I talk about one thing, and then they ask more questions, like more detailed questions about that item. So and I tried to, what I've learned after speaking with Linda with our one-on-one
Mhm.
is to focus the questions or focus my answers to the job details and how my strengths, my transferable skills apply to that job description. And that's helped a lot too.
Good. So there were a couple of really good points there. One of which is it has to be a story about you and the way you work. That we have a tendency to talk too much. Okay. In fact, most people talk themselves out of jobs than talk themselves in. Okay. So do be careful about that. Then I want to know from this side of the desk what your role is. Now, you can absolutely talk about your role in that team, but it's not just we did. I want to know what you did to contribute to that. The other point is that I really, truly want to have a story. They may not ask the question in the or phrase it as, tell me about a time when, but in your head, that's what they're asking. Tell me about a time when you did this. And while Amazon is much more straightforward about having the way that they're looking and specifically talk about in their materials, we're looking for the person behind the story, the empathetic, the emotional intelligence, the leadership, all the rest of it, right? I'll tell you that almost every other company is doing exactly the same thing. They're just not necessarily being as upfront about it and telling you that. Most companies will have a kind of, I don't want to call it a hidden agenda, but they do have another way of looking at it. So it's not just the what you say, it's what you say means. What else can I glean from it? So when I tell you that there are no right or wrong answers to most of these things, that's because what I'm looking for goes beyond the situation. It goes into the individual and the way you work with other people. And that's what I'm going to hear behind the scenes. So your stories are really important. And before I get to you, John, just a moment, I want you to think about stories that you're telling as start stories. Okay, you don't have to present all of it as part of it, but as part of your planning process. You've all probably heard of a STAR story. I'm going to call it a start story instead. It's situation, task, action, result, and then the transferability or the tie-in to the new role. You can have the best story in the world, but unless I can see how it might be appropriate in my role, unless I can make that tie-in, it's not a great story. Now, think about those points, all of them, the situation, the task, the analysis, the action, the result, and the tie-in as part of your planning process for what that story is going to be. Don't go through all the stages in your answer. You don't have time, and you're going to lose me. I want to know that you've done that analysis by the way you're talking. So in your answer, when you're giving me the tell me about a time when, what I'm looking for is you may talk a little bit about the situation, but I'm really looking for what you did and what was the result. And show me in a way that makes sense, that I understand, that you know what was going on, that I can fully understand it, because now you're sharing that example. And one of the things that I used to do, one of my jobs, I recruited for IT, high-level IT roles. Did I understand what they were doing? No. Did it matter? Actually, it was an advantage, because my thinking was that if they couldn't explain it to me, even if I knew what they were talking about, but if they couldn't explain it to me as a naive person, they didn't really understand it, nor could they really interact with people outside their own department. So the idea is to be able to tell me about a time when, for every single question, unless they're asking you something that is, have you taken a class in this? Yes, and here's what I learned. Okay, thank you. Okay, John.
There's a lot of Johns on this call.
I know, I'm sorry. John Kornitsky.
Yep, I see him.
Okay. You want to unmute and join us? John, can you unmute? Yeah, well,
John Ray can, so I'll jump back into the puddle
okay.
here. And, your analogy is great about the way Amazon interviews. They don't ask things, they ask actions. Like, so tell me about a situation where you were in total friction with your customer and how you dealt with that, and then what happened. So there's 1, 2, 3.
Mhm.
And like I said, keep it succinct. You only have 20 minutes, and they're gonna keep asking you more questions. But they're more. I found that their style was very much tuned to the, what you did, not what your team did, what you did, and then how the customer responded, and then what happened after that.
Mhm.
And if you can kind of have a couple of those, I had tons of Post-it notes on paper all over my office when I was going into that interview process. And they, they right hand you. Like, well, I didn't expect that question. But I appreciate everybody being on the call today. I have to jump to a meeting, and I'm glad to be able to contribute a little bit to the conversation today.
We appreciate it. Thank you very much for your help. And thank you all. I can stay on for about another 5 minutes or so to do another couple of quick questions or responses.
Well,
And-
hi. I finally got unmuted. I tried 3 different ways
Oh my
before it actually
goodness.
worked.
Okay.
Anyhow, just to go back to the other Johns and just to dovetail off to what they said, I kind of started out the way the first John said was general, but I always end with, for example, and then that's where I come with the specific, and I simplify it to, basically a case study format, which is SAR for me, which is situation, action, which includes my part in it, and the result, which includes my part in it. And so that way it kind of frames everything, and it also shortens the answer as well. And I found that to be to work quite well.
Good. Thank you. Okay. And James, looks like you've got your hand raised as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up with these stories. I'm in the middle of working on my source stories for when I have interviews, and it's interesting to hear that you show what you did and what your approach was, and so does it necessarily need to have a happy ending?
No, it does not.
Okay.
In fact, one of the things we're talking about next week we're talking about how to be flawsome. Okay.
I have stories that were in progress and I did not get a chance to see the end result, or they were still being worked on.
Okay. So if you can, make sure that you have some sort of an ending. Yeah. That makes sense for it. Right. Here's what you expect it to happen, but
we always like to try to put the ball in the I'm in tech support, client application support. So we're always looking to, put the responsibility of what to do next on the client so they can get back to us just to keep it moving forward.
Absolutely. So that's kind of the thing that we do. All right. Yeah. And the stories are really important. We'll do another conversation, sounds like, on how do you build those start stories, and then another one on how do you transition fields or roles. Other ideas of questions or situations that you'd like us to cover in these sessions, you need to let me know. These have to work for you. Okay, so you can add them into the chat. You can add them into the private group. I'm going to add, if I can find it again. Okay. We still have for another couple of months something called a Jamboard. A Jamboard is online brainstorming. I'm looking for another tool because this one is going away. But it allows you to add your ideas as to what to use with the Jamboard. Okay, what topics you want to cover. The more sticky notes there are for the same topic, the more I know that people are interested in it. You all have access to that Jamboard just by following that link. Okay, that's not going to go away. If you want directions on how to use the Jamboard, you can let me know and I'll be happy to send them to you. Okay. All right. Oh, Michelle, you've got your hand raised again. Yes. You're muted, Michelle. There you go.
Thank you. A suggestion for a replacement for Jamboard might be Miro. I could send you a couple others.
That's perfect. Actually, Miro is one that I'm looking at, so that's perfect. Thank you. Okay. Other ideas? All right. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Next week, we will be talking about how to be flawsome. Not a word that I created, but I kind of like it. So it's acknowledging, recognizing, and building on some of the flaws that we all have. We're also going to be using that time as another networking session. So as part of next week's session, we're going to do some small group networking. We will do some at the end of the meeting. And for those who are interested, we will do another session afterwards. So the hope is to do 2 rounds of that small group networking next week. Okay. In the meantime, copy the chat and turn off the recording. If you have not